everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope you're doing well. My name is Rose. I'll be your co-host for today, and maybe we can give the rest a minute, as I can see the numbers are still going up, and then we'll start. Thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to today's webinar hosted by Ascent on product compliance. Good to see your chat streaming in, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you're joining us from. Thank you so much for joining us again. So, as I said, we'll take a minute or so to see if the numbers will shoot up, and then we'll start. It's nice to see suppliers joining us from all over. I can see a number from the United States. I can see from the EU. All right, so I guess it's 1 minute past. We'll just start. And yeah, the numbers are already high enough. So, yes. So, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. Thank you so much for joining us on today's webinar hosted by Ascent on product compliance. We will be covering EU Reach, EU ROHAS, and California Proposition 65. And it's hosted by Ascent. We, once again, I'll mention that we will be covering EU Reach, EU ROHAS, and California Proposition 65. And it's hosted by Ascent. I'm not sure if you can see me. I apologize for that. We are experiencing heavy downfall here, so we have lost power for the last minute there. So I apologize for that. I think I'm back online. Just for the sake of the bandwidth, I think I'll go off camera, hoping things will get stable for now. I apologize for that. All right. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your understanding. So let me just go off camera and then we start. Apologies for that. All right, so thank you for joining us. And today's webinar will be on product compliance. We will be covering EU REACH, EU ROHAS, and California Proposition 65, and it's hosted by Ascent. Once again, I'll mention that we don't take it for granted that you've set aside time to join us, so we thank you for that. So for our usual reminders, our presentation for today will last for an hour, and for that hour, we'll cover the overview, we'll do the declarations, how to determine a valid declaration, and then we'll also have a walkthrough of the submission process via the Ascent portal, and then we'll set aside some time, maybe 10-15 minutes for the questions that will be asked. So yeah, stay tuned in to see what's coming up next. So to help us navigate the system, in case any one of us is joining us for the first time, I'll highlight a few features about the Goldcast platform. So today's webinar is live using the Goldcast platform, and I believe the system itself is quite easy and friendly to use, because I can see already a good number of us are familiar with the chat function. So that's amazing. So I'll just highlight a few other features that will help you navigate and stay comfortable with us for the next hour. The first one is the chat option, which I believe a good number of us are already familiar with. So yes, so in case you want to get in touch with us via instant messaging, then the chat is the best option for that, because for the next 1 hour, you'll be muted for the entire duration of this webinar. Then right besides the chat option, you should be able to see the polls option. So this is where you'll be able to answer some of our questions when we launch a poll during this hour. And then after that, we have the docs section, and this is quite important. We want to lay emphasis on this. It's highly recommended simply because we have linked some of our most useful resources for you here. For instance, you have access to our help center, which has tons of resources for the different regulations. Then we also have linked to our events and live webinars. So in case you need to peruse through some of our past or upcoming webinars, then you can click on that link. Then we also have the declaration templates. Just in case you do not customize your own templates in-house, then you can make use of the declaration templates that we have. So we have a link, and they're available in multiple or different languages. So in case English is not your first language or your preferred language, then you can access declaration templates in other languages as well. Next to it, we have the Q&A tab. It's again another important tab. I'd love to recommend that in case you have a question that you'd love for it to be answered by our expert who's with us here today, then you can make use of the Q&A tab. The difference between the chat and the Q&A tab is that mostly for the questions that we'll answer during this live session, we'll pick them from the Q&A. And then if we don't get to them during the live session, we'll pull a report again from the Q&A and then send an email to you within the coming week. So if you have any questions regarding the REACH, RoHS, and California Proposition 65, feel free to drop them at the Q&A section. Then we have the CC button. So if you're hard of hearing or you're unable to understand what I'm saying right now, then you can click on the CC button. And then we have a couple of languages available for you. So in case English, again, is not your preferred language, then you can switch to your preferred language. And then, don't know if there's any other functionality that I'm missing, but we'll set aside some 10, 15 minutes to answer some of your questions. So feel free to ask them as we go along. Having said that, I'd like to introduce myself as one of your speakers for today. My name is Rose, a supply education and engagement specialist here at Ascent. And today we are lucky to be joined by one of our senior regulatory and sustainability experts, Valerie, who will be taking us through the overview, and she'll also be able to answer some of the questions that we have today. So yeah, we are happy to have Valerie join us today, and she'll be helping us understand more about the 3 regulations that will be taking us through today. Yeah, so let's talk about, let's have a look at what you're going to cover today. And the first one is I'll introduce Ascent, just in case any one of us is new here. So I'll talk about who Ascent is, and then the regulation overview of the 3 regulations: product compliance, that is EU REACH, EU RoHS, and California Proposition 65. And then we'll set aside some time to talk about valid declarations. I know some of us struggle to understand why maybe your declaration was rejected or what is missing in your declaration. So we'll talk about the acceptance criteria for you to maybe get more about it. And then we'll have a walkthrough, a submission walkthrough of EU REACH specifically. And we'll do it using the Ascent Sustainability Platform, which I believe some of us are already trying to navigate. Then we'll also have time for the Q&A discussion, and then we'll share some resources that we have for you that could come in handy. Yeah, so in case any one of us is new here, let me just take a minute to highlight about Ascent. So Ascent is a leading global provider of supply chain management software. So what it basically means is that your customers, who are also our customers, are using our software, which we call the Ascent Sustainability Manager, to collect information for the different regulations. So many a times we reach out to you as their suppliers because they've given us the go-ahead or the authorization to contact their supply chain with the goal of collecting compliance information. As you can see on your screen right now, Ascent is trusted by Fortune 500, some of the Fortune 500 manufacturers, from the logo that you see on the screen. And we partner with manufacturers or companies to just help them collect their data on compliance, sustainability, and vendor management. As a global company, we also have offices located in different regions that you can see on the screen. So our head office is in Ottawa, and then we also have our office in the United States, in Kenya, in the EU, and in Malaysia. So yeah, so that's basically it about Ascent. So what we do for suppliers is we provide support to ensure that you are comfortable enough to provide the compliance information that your customer is requesting from you. And one of the ways that we do that is through training like this webinar, and providing multiple resources and the support teams that are available for you anytime you need. Yeah, so basically your customer just needs to demonstrate that their products are compliant with the different regulatory requirements. So sharing their product data or compliance information through our platform will help your customer meet suppliers' expectations. Yes, having said that, I'd now hand it over to Valerie to take it away. Welcome, Valerie.
Thank you, Rose. Okay, so we're going to start out with one of the almost oldest ones of the regulations that have been around since 2007, and that is going to be the REACH regulation. REACH itself does stand for a acronym: Registration, Evaluation, Authorization, and Restriction of Chemicals. The majority of those lists, the evaluation, authorization, and restriction, are actually lists of substances, and registration is going to be actually telling the EU about any of the substances that you actually use and how they're used, specifically at the substance and mixture level. It is an official regulation. It is the EC 1907-2006. It's been in effect since 2007 in the European Economic Area, which goes beyond the European Union to include several states that are outside of the European Union, but also want to follow along with what the regulations that the EU implements are. So it includes a couple additional states beyond the EU, but they are also following what REACH is requiring. The goal is to protect the people and the environment from potentially harmful chemical substances, and it requires reporting of the chemical composition of articles, specifically for the SVHCs, but it can also apply for other of the lists that we're about to go through. As I noted, there are 3 actual substance lists within the REACH regulation. The first one is the candidate list, and this is the candidate list of substances of very high concern, or SVHCs. They're candidate to go on for authorization. So at this point in this list, the substances are not actually restricted. It is a communication requirement. So in order to be compliant with this portion of REACH, you have to actually be telling your customers and also putting the information into the SCIP database about any of the SVHCs that are over the 0.1% threshold at the article level, which is basically the lowest level that you can get to when you're dealing with REACH. The next list is the authorization list. And this one requires for substances and mixtures and their actual use within the EU. This is a prohibition or a requirement to get authorization for the use of those substances and mixtures actually within the EU. Anything that's happening outside of the EU can still happen if it's coming in as part of an article. So authorization only applies when it's dealing with substances and mixtures actually used during manufacture, maintenance, or for sale, et cetera, that you're going to use within the EU. Authorization applies to those substances and mixtures as being used in the EU. The last list is the Annex 17 list, or the restriction list. And this is an actual list of restrictions for those substances. There are specific conditions that apply when you're dealing with Annex 17. So it's not always a full restriction. It can be a full restriction of the substance and its use. It could be a restriction of certain use cases, so you can't use it in this exact use case, like, for example, lead in jewelry. Or it can be a condition of you can't use it over this percentage in certain use cases. There are derogations or exemptions that do apply, and those will be defined within the conditions of the entry. So you have to go read the conditions of the entry to understand exactly what the restrictions are. But when you receive a request from your customer asking for these substances, it means that they believe that their products could be in scope. So they want to make sure that you're going to respond to the information that they're requesting so that they can confirm that they are not using the substances in a way that is actually restricted. So the REACH candidate list is the most common one that our customers ask about. It is the initial evaluation of the substances. So these substances of very high concern, or SVHCs, are evaluated against the article. An article is once it gets a specific shape or form, meaning that when you put something into a specific shape or form, a pen that you write with is actually made up of several different articles and is considered a complex article. So that came about because of the 2015 European Court of Justice decision that said once an article, always an article. So basically, once it got a specific shape or form, if the 0.1% threshold of that SVHC is exceeded, then you must communicate for the rest of the life of that part or product that uses whatever that article is. So it is going to go down to the smallest part level. The list is updated twice a year, usually in January and June or July. So you're constantly going to be requested for this information from your customers because they need to be keeping up to date, but they also have a responsibility to make sure that it's reported in the SCIP database. And they will need to make sure that it's there. And if you do any actual activity within the EU, you also have a responsibility to put it into the SCIP database, as well as making sure that you're doing that communication to the next level in the supply chain. Moving on to RoHS. This one is actually technically the oldest because it did come out originally in 2002, went into effect in 2003, but they did a recast of it in 2011. So in 2011, RoHS 2 came out, and that added some changes to the entire initial regulation or directive in this case that required actual CE marking under RoHS. It expanded what substances, it expanded the products that were in scope. So they added an 11th category, which is a catch-all, anything else not already listed that meets the definition of electrical and electronic equipment. And it also added some expiration dates onto the actual exemptions that were there, as well as expanding those out as well. There are several different exemptions that are included as part of RoHS. So there's 10 substances that are restricted or substance categories. So you have this original 6, and those are the compounds. So that will include any of the substances that that are already listed as like for lead and lead compounds, cadmium and cadmium compounds. Those are all specifically the entire list of those substances that meet the definition of what lead compounds are. They added on 4 phthalates. So those are specific CAS numbers related to those phthalates. That is the amendment to RoHS 2. It's not actually RoHS 3. It is an amendment 2. And then there are a number of exemptions that do apply for RoHS across all of the different categories. So Annex 3 includes categories 1 through 11. So everything is covered under that. And then Annex 4 covers only the category 8 medical devices and category 9 monitoring and control instruments. And there's a list to the latest version of it through ECHA, as well as an updated list through Ascent. There are some new exemptions that are coming out in the near future. In fact, there's another webinar that's happening at the same time where they are going into a little bit more detail about what those exemptions updates are. So that one has also been recorded. So if you have had signed up for that, you'll also get a recording of that one. But they're not actually in place yet. So there will be additional announcements and communication from Ascent to let the customers and the suppliers know what's actually going to happen with these things in the future. So keep an eye out for those. And moving on to our last regulation, this is the California Prop 65. It is even older than RoHS. It's been around since 1986. It is a Safe Drinking Water and Toxic Enforcement Act of 1986. It requires businesses to warn California residents about the potential exposure to chemicals that can cause cancer and birth defects or other reproductive harm. It affects all California residents, whether it's at home or at work. So it does include the business-to-business side of things. The list updates usually at least once per year. Sometimes they'll do it a little bit more frequently, but it is extremely long. There's over 1,000 substances on it once you break out the actual substance groups. And unfortunately, it has become a for-profit cottage industry, meaning that citizens and law firms have the ability to sue companies for including substances that they're not warning California citizens about. In fact, just in 2024, over 70 million fines and settlements were collected by using this cottage industry, or what we call the bounty hunter law. The requirements for Prop 65 are you must give a clear and reasonable warning prior to sale or exposure, and you're alerting both the consumers and the workers. So because California OSHA included all of the Prop 65 substances, that's where the business-to-business side of things come in. And it's to potential exposures from intended or foreseeable product use. So for most of the time, your consumers, they're not going to see it very frequently, but your business to business, when you have installers, maintenance workers, et cetera, they're going to be exposed to these things a little bit more frequently, or maybe going into areas that consumers may not. So there may be additional communication that needs to happen related to the communication that has to happen as part of this. There are a couple different warnings that are available right now. The first one is what we call the long form warning, and it goes into a little bit more detail, and you must communicate at least one of the substances for each of the categories that are included in the product that these consumers can be exposed to. So if you have a substance that covers cancer and another one that is listed for reproductive harm, you must include both of them, or you can include one substance that covers both of them. So lead is an example where it covers both. The short form, which is there currently, is much shorter. It only talks about cancer and reproductive harm and does not have an actual listing of the substances today. However, and on the next slide that I'll get to, there is some changes that are coming for that. The use of so-called on-product warning face your different size requirements related to it. So you have to have it be readable. So it has to be at the largest font of whatever type of font you have within your packaging, and it must be at least 6-point type. So they're looking to make sure that people can actually read it as part of the thing, and you must also include it in any language that you have within your packaging. Now, the short form warning was recently updated. So on January 1st of this year, they officially implemented the requirement for the short form warning. It goes into effect for any products manufactured after January 1st of 2028. So they gave a few years to actually get that implementation. You can start at any time, but by January 1st of 2028, any products manufactured after that date must include the actual substances. You can still keep it as short as possible, but you have to include the actual substances. And again, it gets into whether or not you include for multiple categories. If you have multiple substances that cover multiple categories, you need to include those as part of it, the warnings themselves. And now I'm going to turn it back over to, I believe, Rose, to help you understand how to create a valid declaration.
Thank you so much, Valerie, for the amazing overview. I can see so many questions trickling in. We will try to answer as many as possible. So I'll just talk about how to create a valid declaration. And I'll start by highlighting the fact that unlike conflicts minerals or extended minerals, where we have a standard template, which is the CMRT or EMRT, for product compliance, there's some bit of flexibility simply because we don't have an industry like standardized template, which means we accept declarations in different formats. For instance, we accept Excel declarations, PDF, Word, safety data sheets, it could be XML files. So we accept all those. So what we look out for, and it could be customized internally, within your organization, we still accept them. Or if you do not customize your own, we have templates available for you to, for us to make your work easier. So you can make use of our templates. So having said that, since we accept them in different forms, there's a criteria that we look out for when analyzing your declarations on behalf of your customer. And so whenever you send a declaration to us or submit it via the portal, just ensure that it has the following. The first one is it is on the company letterhead. This is just for your customer to know that this declaration is from this particular company or this particular supplier. So just ensure that it's on a company letterhead. Number two is it should include a proper legislative reference. As Valerie has mentioned, we have so many product compliance regulations. So it's just for accuracy purposes, for it to clearly indicate that this is for EU REACH and it's clearly indicated. This is for California Proposition 65, it's clearly indicated. And then include reference to parts or products being covered by the declaration. So we accept declarations for whether it's company-wide, which you call company level, or it could be part level, product level, or sometimes we receive them in series. For instance, someone will send a declaration for a particular series that covers a certain number of parts. So all of them are acceptable. The only thing that we need to be made clear is the declaration should clearly indicate that this declaration covers all our products. This declaration covers some of our products, and in that case, be sure to list them on the same declaration so that there's accuracy and so that they can also be uploaded for the appropriate products or parts. And then you should be able to clearly declare compliance status. From your declaration, your customer should be able to tell that these parts do not contain or these parts contain, such that we would highly emphasize or request you to do away with the ambiguity. Some verbiages are quite ambiguous, so it's very difficult for your customer to tell whether the products contain or do not contain. So if you can clearly indicate products contain or do not contain, that would be awesome. I would give an example of maybe declarations that we receive. Maybe one is saying our products may contain. So it becomes very difficult if you state may contain and then you do not go ahead to indicate what is contained, then it becomes very difficult for your customer to know whether the products contain or do not contain. Then if you've indicated that it contains, then you should be able to declare the substances present. And then if applicable, please be sure to include the concentration level. For instance, for EU REACH, we would require the concentration level and so on and so forth. Then lastly, it should be signed by an appropriate individual. We do not cast it on stone that it should be like a signature. If you do not have a signature, just be sure to include the name of the authorizer and the title. So the name and the title should suffice for that if in case a signature is missing. Then lastly, the date of reference, and this is the date of reference is important because as Valerie mentioned, some of these regulations are updated regularly like EU REACH. So if your customer is requesting for the recently updated version, say for June 2025, then it's important for you to indicate the date, or if the date is missing, let it be clear that our declaration covers the recently updated REACH candidate list of June 2025. So if your date is missing, then if you can include the candidate list, then that would be that should suffice. So that's about it for the valid declaration. So if you're customizing it and it's meeting whatever we've just discussed, then awesome. So this is a sample of our blank declaration template that's available on our portal and help center. So we've made it easier by going a step ahead to add a drop down for you to just select from the drop down whatever version you're declaring for. Otherwise, you just need to insert your company letterhead, indicate the version that you're declaring for. And then if your substances do not contain, you just need to check that box and go ahead and provide information at the bottom about the phone number, email, name, and that should be it. But if your products contain, then you'll go ahead, you'll proceed to fill in the table and indicate the substances and the concentration level. If you have the CAS number, again, you'll go ahead and indicate. So this is how our template looks like. Yeah, so I'll proceed to walk you through. Time is on our side today, so that's perfect. I'll share my screen and proceed to walk you through how to do a submission. I'll do it using the Ascent Sustainability platform for you to see how to navigate our new platform. So just give me a second. Should take a second to load and we should be good. Yes. So this is how our newly launched platform looks like. I would say recent because it's not quite new as at now. This is how it looks like. I know some of you are using the ASP, which is this one, the Ascent Sustainability Platform. I'm also aware that some of us could be using the Supplier Portal, which is our original or our legendary portal. So it's okay if you're using either. The ASP just makes work a bit easier for you because it has more features and functionality. So today I'll do it through the ASP. So I'm using our training environment, so it might appear slightly different from your end because ours doesn't have actual customer and supplier names. So yours will have your actual customer and supplier name. So this is how the home page looks like. You have access to the product requests, any regulatory updates, and the product catalog. And then there are some sections that I'll highlight. The product catalog. So if you are new to this platform, then the catalog will probably be new. So you can create and import products, or you can identify your products from the product request section, and they should be able to appear here. So whatever you can do from the product catalog, you can equally do the same from the product request new. And then these two sections are what is different from our initial supplier portal. So let me maybe highlight a few things about these other sections, and then I'll come back to the product request new for us to proceed with the declaration submission. So we have the product request classic, which is, I would say, more or less the same with our supplier portal, which probably most of you have access to. So any request, individual requests linked to your different customers will be available here. Then company requests will contain ESG related requests and sometimes conflicts minerals, if in this case your customer is requesting for the company level CMRT. Otherwise, all ESG related requests will be available here. And the advantage of this section is you have the option to reuse your submission. So in case you already did a submission on ESG and you have received another request from a different customer, you can make use of the reuse submission to avoid you from repeating the entire process, which could be exhausting. So any ESG related request will be available here. Then if there's any corrective action following your ESG submission, it will be available here, and you can come here, click on the request or the link, and it should lead you to whatever corrective action you're supposed to take. Then declaration history is again a new functionality. This one allows you to view any declaration that you have submitted. So if there's any submission that you have done, you can be able to view it here. And we have a few things that you can do here. You can edit a previously submitted declaration. If you maybe submitted a declaration and you feel like some information was not accurate, you can come and edit from this section. You can cancel a declaration. But just a point to note is once you cancel a declaration, you need to re-upload the appropriate one for the submission to now go through successfully. Then you can view any products, any submission that you did. So if you did a submission here, you can view products to just view whatever products you did a submission for. So this is also a new functionality. So I'll focus on product request new. So here you have you can get a request. So all requests linked to 6 modules, that is EU REACH, EU RoHS, Prop 65, TSCA restriction, PFAS, and CBAM will be available here. So these requests, you'll not find them in any other section apart from the product request new. And then you can filter by customer, you can filter by topic or regulation, or you can filter by dates. And then, so I'll focus on REACH for today. So I'll go to the in progress one. So once you complete a submission, it will move from the open tab to closed here. But in case, so you have to complete the submission for it to move to closed. So I'll go ahead and proceed with the REACH one. So I'll go with REACH for Prime Tech as a customer. So you'll scroll to the right, click view. And then, yes, so we'll find the product part numbers or product numbers that this customer Prime Tech is requesting from me in this case. So you need to select a part. So if all your parts, for instance, you have a company level declaration and all your parts have the same compliance status, I just need to check on this box and it will select all of them. But if they have different compliance statuses, then you need to select the appropriate ones and upload one at a time. So for instance, I can select this one, then do a submission for this one because it has a different status compared to the rest. So we have some features here that you can see. The first one is if I want to declare, this is where I go to. Then if I want to identify, maybe I had not identified this product, I can start by identifying. And then this is a new functionality in the Ascend Sustainability platform where you have the unable to respond button. I think we have an issue with so many suppliers who keep sharing their feedback that I've received your request, but I've seen a product or a part in your portal which I do not recognize or which I stopped supplying or maybe which is obsolete. So in that case, you can click unable to respond and share this feedback directly with your customer. Just come and say, I do not recognize this product or this customer, or it's inactive. So if you select maybe this customer, go ahead and share some comment on, give your customer some context on why you shared that feedback. If maybe it is inactive, just come and say, we stopped producing this product for over 4 years ago. So yes, give some context and then click submit, and your customer will get this feedback and they will be able to action it. So unable to respond and having trouble responding serve the same purpose. It will allow you to share your feedback directly to your customer. Then once they have shared their feedback, you can get access to your customer's feedback by clicking view submitted feedback, and you'll see what your customer has responded. So I'll go ahead and click declare. Then the advantage, the ultimate advantage of the ASP once more is that you can be able to do a submission for more than one regulation. So if, for instance, I had a request for, say, 5 regulations. Okay, let me go back, show why it's acting up. So let me just go here and select, this one is pending. Let me just go back. Yeah, so I can start with these 2 and then click declare. Yeah, so if you wanted to do a submission, so this is only possible in the ASP and not in the supplier portal. If maybe I have a request for this customer and I wanted to do a submission for EU REACH and EU RoHS at the same time, so you can go ahead and select. So you see we have those 5 regulations here. So I can go ahead and select REACH and maybe Prop 65 and maybe RoHS and do the submission at the same time. So then what I need to ensure is that the products that I selected have the same compliance status. Then now I'll come. So for REACH, maybe I'll indicate that the product is contained. I mean, the product contains. So we have 2 options. The first one, this checkbox informs you that the REACH SVHC are not contained. So if they're not contained, I just need to check this box, and that's it about REACH under the compliance status. Then for proposition 65, maybe I'll assume that it contains. So you will need to either enter the CAS number or the substance name. So for instance, if I'll do, maybe I'll say it contains lead. So I've started typing the CAS number and then there'll be a pop-up. I'll just click select. And it will go ahead and ask me the concentration level of the substance that I selected, which I'll enter. And then if there are any exemptions, so if there are none, then I'll not select any. Then that should be it about Prop 65 at that particular point in time. Then I'll go ahead for and submit for EU RoHS and maybe say product meets without any exemption. And check the box. As you can see, while I'm checking the boxes, it's ticking green here. So if I didn't enter any information, I'll still have it pending here, or there'll be an exclamation mark in red indicating that you need to provide more information. And then supporting documentation here is optional. So if you have a declaration, well and good, you can drag it here or upload. If you do not have, like in this case, I do not have, I'll just pass. And then you can preview your declarations. So the 3 that have been generated by the system, you can click preview to have a look at the declarations. And then there are 3 consent checkboxes here that you need to check. And then that should be it. So you just need to indicate the compliance status, submit a declaration supporting documentation if you have. If you do not have, then it's still okay. And then just check the consent boxes here, then save and submit, and you are done. That's it. So it's quite easy, though it might be challenging if you are still new to the platform, but it's a bit easier compared to the supplier portal. So that way, I've submitted a declaration for 2 parts, and I've submitted for 3 regulations: EU REACH, RoHS, and Proposition 65. So I'll stop sharing for now, and then maybe have Valerie join me so that we can answer some of the questions that we have here. Let me see how many of them have been answered already. So I'll just be projecting them on the screen for it to be easier. So Carl is asking, are our submissions reviewed by a real person or is it automated? Yeah, maybe I can take this one on. So it depends. If you submit via our portal or you send in via our support team, I would say some of our customers have what we call approve reject. And this means that either the customer or Ascent will be manually reviewing and approving the declarations. So yes, it's reviewed by a real person, not automated. And you'll always get an email response in case there's a pushback for you to update your declaration. So you'll get an email response indicating the reason as to why your declaration was rejected and where it needs to be updated. And then there's one here about the requirements to obtain the new platform. As a supplier, it's free of charge. You will just be able to get a link for this platform or for our supplier portal via the campaign email receive from Ascent on behalf of your customer. So in case you need access to our new platform, I think my colleague Rebecca can link in the chat. You just need to sign up, and it will take our team at least 48 hours for them to update your information, and then you will be able to fully access our platform. It has an advantage that you're able to submit to a number of your customers at the same time, and you can submit for more than one regulation. So there are questions here about Prop 65. Let me just project them. Valerie, maybe you can take this one on.
Yep, absolutely. So if you don't know the concentration, it does make it a little bit more difficult in order to actually respond. Today, you are not able to actually say unknown. It is a functionality that we are working with our product team to allow. However, be aware that many of our customers are not going to allow an unknown concentration. So there will be pushback from certain of your customers, as well as continued requests for this information during campaigns to you. So it does work in your best interest to actually go ask your suppliers to see what additional information they can provide. So that's one of the reasons why all of this works out the way that it does, is most of these regulations and all the ones that we've pretty much talked about today, you have to go down to your supply chain in order to get the information so that you can provide it to your customers. And that's one of the main reasons why Ascent does kind of what it does, and anybody else that is trying to get this information. They need you to go to your supply chain because they don't know who your suppliers are. They only know who their suppliers are. So the idea is you have to go down all the way to the bottom of whatever the list is, sometimes even including the raw material suppliers, to actually get the information and then be able to submit it. Testing isn't normally required as part of it, but you do end up having to provide some type of information as these regulations continue expanding.
I think this is similar to what you just answered.
Yep.
Yeah, so that should suffice. Then there's one here on the ASP. So is there an option to declare for multiple regulations in the Product Request Classic? Not really. So the Product Request Classic functions the same way with our supplier portal. So if you need to declare for multiple regulations, then the Product Request New section should be your go-to section, or the product catalog. Otherwise, Classic would function the same way our supplier portal functions. And then there's one here on EU REACH. Okay, this has already been answered. Let me check out one that has not been answered. Yeah, there you go. Valerie, I think this should be for you.
Yep. I'm just reading through it real quick.
Okay. Take your time.
Okay, so the reason for asking about mixtures specifically, even though it's not an article, the idea is most of the time when mixtures are included as part of a REACH SVHC in the communication, and it's partly because of SCIP as well, but the idea is that the SVHC is still there, but it's within whatever the mixture is. And when that mixture is applied to something else, then it becomes part of that article. So therefore, they need to understand how much of the SVHC is still in that mixture once it's applied to the article. Example, paint on the hood of a car. The paint containing SVHC on the hood of the car still needs to have an understanding of how much of the SVHC is in there. So for the substance list, where do you find the date? It can vary depending on which list you're looking at, but oftentimes we do include the date within the request. So there's usually a version, and that version number is oftentimes the date that is being requested for that specific list, unless it is a version, like if you're dealing with ADDSL, for example, they use a version as opposed to an actual date for the lists.
I think this is quite a common scenario here, where declaration states that we do not intentionally add.
Right. So saying you do not intentionally add does not mean that your suppliers haven't. So that's another reason why we ask to try and go down through your supply chain to make sure that they haven't done it. Just because you haven't doesn't mean they haven't. So it's confirming that by going down through the entire supply chain, that you have the proper information against the entire product that you're supplying to your customer. So going to your supply chain then is the right answer. In most cases, not intentionally added is being able to say, no, we don't have it, because oftentimes trace is not intended to be reported unless it's going to be over threshold.
And then there's this one, which I believe is also a common scenario from our suppliers. They do not commercialize their products in California. Therefore, they don't add the specifics on the labels itself. But what is their obligation? Could their customer be commercializing in California in this case?
Yeah, your customer could be doing it, and that's one of the reasons why they're asking you for the information. You're not required to put the labels on yourself, but you are required as part of the process to inform them of the substances that you have in your products, so that they can make the decision of whether or not they need to put a label on for those substances or report it under the California OSHA requirements.
I think it's related to this one, so I'll just share it in case you have any addition.
Again, if your customer is the one that's doing it, most of the time you can inform them. Sometimes they will request that you put the label on. It depends on what your part or product is and what the final product making it into California is. So if the label is not going to be seen by somebody in California because it's embedded in something else, then there's not a whole lot of point to you doing a label, but your customer really should if there's going to be potential exposure.
All right, then there's these bits. I think it's about contract manufacturers, where your customer specifies the specific paint systems and painters on the metal that I supply to them. I do not know the details of the paint systems, nor am I an organic chemist. How do I report on this? I know what the metal itself contains, but cannot report on the part numbers with their specified paint systems.
So this one does get a little bit more difficult because your customer is specifying. However, if they're not specifying who to get it from, they're looking for you to try and get that information from whomever you are getting it from. So oftentimes, your supplier your customer may require that you get a paint of this type without saying get it from this manufacturer. And in those cases, you're the one that has the relationship with your supplier, and you're going to be able to get that information. Your customer can't reach down to your supplier and say, tell me what you have in here, because they don't know them. So that's a lot of the reasons why with distributors, it's still being requested of you because they need you, who have the relationship with the supplier, to provide that information so that they can accurately report for their own products.
I think there's this one about EU REACH submission where Felix is asking, the name of the article is required, but they only sell the mixture and they do not know which article it will be applied to. Yes, and when submitting for EU REACH, we usually request for the article name.
Right. In this case, your article is going to be the paint or whatever it is,
Yeah.
whatever mixture it is that you're providing, that is what you can use as the article, and then provide any additional information that you can about that paint. And in this case, you would probably go into the mixture section and provide the SVHC and the mixture category.
And then I think this one should be similar to what we answered. If not intentionally added, but there are trace amounts coming from the mill, we can say not intentionally added, question mark.
You can, but it does get a little bit more difficult when there's trace amounts that may be coming. And the main idea here is there a possibility for it to be over threshold? And therefore, you probably need to communicate what that trace amount substance is so that they can do their own evaluation about how they want to continue to communicate that. So just saying not intentionally added doesn't always answer the question to the level that the supplier, your customer, needs to have.
And then I think this is also quite a challenge for a good number of suppliers where they're asking what guidance can you provide if a customer is seeking declaration, but not our supplier, is either out of business, end of life material, or just doesn't respond to declaration requests. I think this is where you provide the feedback to your customer.
Exactly. Work with your customer, let them know that this is what's going on. Because the reason they're asking for this is your customer is continuing to use that material and they are continuing to put it into new products that are going into whatever required area and the regulations that apply for that area. So even though it's out of life, the business has ended, whatever, your customer still has a stockpile of these products and they still need to make sure that they have that information. And when you're communicating to your customer saying that just can't get the information, then that gives your customer some additional options for what they can do in order to show compliance, whether they do some testing or they just discontinue the use of that part.
And then there's the elephant in the room again, proprietary information.
Right. Anything that is required to be disclosed, meaning it's on a specific list, means that the supplier needs to disclose it. The rest of the information related to that material or part can remain proprietary. But it does end up being like a little bit of a negotiation. But at minimum, any substance that is required to be disclosed or is restricted needs to be communicated as part of the part of product declaration.
Right. Then there's this one here from Anonymous. Support has not yet helped me with this. When will this be fixed? Please let me know what the issue is and maybe we can follow up to ensure that you're sorted. Sorry about that. And then we have one on Prop 65, safe harbor levels.
Yes.
When do they come into play?
They absolutely do. But when we're requesting it on behalf of our customers, oftentimes they have a better view of their intended use of your part or product. So we usually ask with a zero threshold, meaning please tell us that you have these substances and how much. Again, the concentration becomes important in those cases because then they can do the calculation for the safe harbor levels and determine do they need to communicate or not. So yes, it does come into play. And yes, you can say to your customer, we're not above the safe harbor levels. You can absolutely say that, but your customers are ultimately the initial ones that are getting evaluated in California, and they're the first ones that are going to get hit by any lawsuit that comes forward. So they need to know that these are below the safe harbor levels, especially if somebody tests for it and then sues them.
Then the list of chemicals. I think before I'll have Valerie add to it, but they are available when you log into our portal, both supplier portal and the ASP. You'll find the list. You're able to download the list in Excel. Then they're also found in maybe the ECHA website. But Valerie, you can add to this.
Right. So there's several different areas that you can go and try and find the list of the chemicals, but as part of the download, you can see what chemicals are intended to be included in the list so that you can look at those and determine, do you have any of them? Oftentimes the list, when it's downloaded from our system, will include the substance group, but once you get into the actual portal, you can enter in substance CAS numbers or EC numbers that represent whatever the substances are within those groups. But ultimately, the intention being that the substance list that you're receiving is what's required by whatever the regulation is. And you can get it from multiple places. And usually when you're going into the portal, there are some additional links that will help you if you need to go out to what the official list, or you want to go someplace else to look for things and not just get it from within our system.
All right. And then there's a question here from Arya asking whether there's a concentration level that can be used if they do not know the concentration level.
Again, this is where you need to start asking your suppliers to try and get the information as much as possible. And if you seriously don't know what the concentration level is, then you need to work with your customer to determine what they want you to do in those cases. And like I said, that we are trying to work towards allowing the ability to say, I don't know, but keep in mind that you're still going to have customers that say, I absolutely refuse to accept that. Please go get it. So it does work in your best interest to go get it from your supplier so that you can actually provide that to your customers, because they're not going to stop pushing for it, especially as more of these regulations come out.
Maybe we'll just take one more and then we wrap up. But before we take one more, I've seen so many questions on the ASP. So if you submitted a declaration and your status has been pending for quite some time, maybe over a week, please reach out to support via the chat functionality or via email and let it be followed up. It could be a bug in the system, so let it just be followed up. And then if you are new and you do not have access to our platform, Rebecca has pinned the link. Please feel free to navigate. Then there's also a question on, there's so many questions on the platform on the suppliers who do not recognize the products or the products are obsolete or inactive. Just submit feedback via the Ascend Sustainability platform. Then there's also one comment on a portal asking for a declaration. So the supplier portal, it's mandatory for you to submit a declaration. It's only optional in the Ascend Sustainability platform. So if you're using the supplier portal, you'll have to submit a declaration. But if you're using the Ascend Sustainability platform, then it should be optional for you. So I don't know if there's one more. I'll have Valerie take, and then
I have one more question I want to answer.
Yes, please.
And we don't have full material declarations in the XML IPC 7252A format, and the portal does not allow me to submit a PDF file. The reason that it doesn't allow the PDF file is because the PDF file, which is the old 1752, is no longer supported. It was discontinued in 2010 and really should not be being used even for FMDs. There are several different solutions that will allow you to generate So the PDF really should just do and I just came from an IPC conference and all of us are talking about the same thing. the PDF is no longer supported, and we really need everybody to get onto the latest one. And we're going to be coming out with a brand new version of it coming in soon. So.
All right. Thank you so much. I think we've covered as many questions as we could. This was probably one of the webinars where we had time to answer the questions. As always, we did not get time to answer all of your questions, but not to worry. We will pull a report and answer them and then get back to you with all the responses in the coming week. The webinar is also recorded, so you should be able to get a recording of this webinar within 24 hours from now in your email. And then I'm going to launch a poll. Then I'll share a few resources that we have for you. So please take a second to respond to the poll for us. It's important for us because we'll know where to improve in our upcoming webinars. So please take a second to respond to the poll. Should be open and will be open for the next minute or two. Otherwise, just to thank you so much for setting aside 1 hour for you to join us. And I'll just love to highlight that we have a few upcoming webinars. Let me just share my screen here shortly. So we have support. I've seen one of you stating that support has not been able to respond to you. Maybe you can try the chat functionality. That should be very swift, or the call, but we have various channels for which you can reach out to us. And then we have upcoming webinars again, where we have our experts like Valerie, who will join us and be able to answer some of our questions for the last quarter of the year. So feel free to click on the links once we share the deck and register for any of the upcoming webinars. Then if you have a question that has not been answered, we will get back to you in the coming week. And if you're frustrated over a request that you had that has not been responded to, or navigating the platform, you can reply in the email thread. So I'll send you an email of the responses for the questions that you had today. So in case you have any frustration or something, you need help navigating the platform, just reply to that email thread. And my colleague Rebecca, or any other person should be able to support you to ensure that you're okay and we make your experience smooth. So thank you so much. Please take a minute to answer the poll. I'm going to close it in the next few seconds. Valerie, I don't know if you have any addition or any question that popped up that you want to address as we wrap up.
Nope, just want to say thank you to everybody. The suppliers are the most important people that are part of this whole regulation example that is out there. And we really appreciate everybody that is providing the data and trying to get the information to their customers as quickly as possible. So thank you for that.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. We appreciate you, and see you in the next webinar. You'll get a recording, you'll get the slide, and you'll get the answers to today's questions. So thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day or afternoon or evening from wherever you're joining us from.